He's my last living family member.
Oh, we are live. All right. Well, hopefully Phil joins us. So, good evening, all, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with the bad girl, the player, the president, and Dangerous Dave. I am Benny Scala, aka the player. With me, as always, is my partner in True Crime, the Boston bad girl, the Siren of Scituate, New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Famer, and most importantly, Archie's mom, like she was just talking about, the vivacious Brittany Brown. Brittany, how are you?
I am doing fine. I had a hell of a busy day, a lot of bad luck, but I'm better now.
Good.
How are all of you?
We're going to have a little bit of a storm here, so hopefully my internet stays on. But I think we might be joined by Phil. But for now, to answer that age-old question posed by the great Australian band Men at Work, who can it be now? Well, it can be indie wrestling legend Dangerous Dave Starr. We're glad to report that Dave has survived his birthday blowout. So, Dave, how are you this glorious evening?
I'm doing great for a Monday. I'm not a big fan of Mondays, but this has been a good Monday. I feel pretty good, and I'm ready and raring to go, and raring to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Or as George Burns said in the movie, "Oh God, so help me me." Remember that?
I do remember that.
So before we start with anything, unfortunately, the wrestling world has lost another legend, Sid Udy, aka Sid Vicious, aka Sid Justice, aka Psycho Sid, passed away in his home state of Arkansas at a very young age of 63. Have you guys had any personal experience with Sid?
I did. I wrestled NWA New Jersey a few times with him. He was a very nice guy. Very, very nice.
Really laid-back, nice guy to me, but I never had the pleasure of meeting him. How about you, Dave?
Nope, never met him. Wasn't really a big fan of his. Big guy, but another one that got in there because of his size. But hey, he got in there, and that's the bottom line. And God bless him. And
yeah. Well, there he is, back by popular demand. The president of Thursday Night, Senor Guns, the Count of Mephisto, Muscles Marinara himself, the great Phil DeCesare. Phil, how goes it?
Going great, guys. Good to be back with you guys. It's been a while, so I'm thrilled.
Great to have you back.
Thank you. Yeah. I know you were just briefly touching upon Sid, whom we lost today at age 63, and met him in 1989 for the first time. He walked by me in a corridor of the Worcester Auditorium. The NWA was in town, and they never came to Worcester. And he and Danny Spivey were there, Muda, Flair, Funk, just a whole incredible crew. Road Warrior. It was just all-star. And I just saw the shadow go by, and, I had to look up, and I'm not exactly Tattoo from Fantasy Island, and I had to. Right. I was just, what a presence. And then fast forward 6 years later at Gold's Gym in Worcester, having the good fortune of getting to work out a little bit with Sid, up on the stair stepper, cranking along before he even began his workout. He, again, so impressively statuesque, and just, traps coming out of his ears, but again, legit 6'8" plus, whatever he was. Yeah. He was at the lat pull down machine. He was so tall that he couldn't sit on the machine to do the pull downs. He had to kneel on the floor in front of the machine to do his pull downs to get a range of motion. Just an impressive guy, interesting character, really a very nice guy. Signed my weightlifting belt. I still have it, and I'm going to treasure it now. And Godspeed, Sid. I was just watching him and Luger from 1991 in a match like 2 nights ago on Saturday.
Wow.
I know I live an exciting life. I was watching Sid and Luger from 91, but and how strange for this to happen today. So yeah, my prayers are with his family. And obviously he's very much a family guy. And I guess he had grandchildren too. And at least he got to meet them. So yeah, a big loss, definitely.
We're just glad you're back, Phil, because there was rumors you were stuck on the space station. Wouldn't be back till February. So I'm glad that was false.
Oh, yeah. False rumor, right?
Oh, I didn't get arrested in Canton, thank the Lord, too. You know, that could have been my other fate, potentially, being arrested down there for, you know.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
Bill, I think I have you beat as far as having a dull life. I watched the 3-match championship match for candlepin bowling. It was somewhere in I think Sturbridge, Mass, or somewhere there.
Really?
Yeah, it was from like 1993 or something like that. But I like watching it. I never bowled candlepins, but it seems very like a lot of fun actually.
We grew up on that. That's the only thing we knew, actually. So before we got to the big ball, you know, it was always candlepin. So yeah, for us, it was the total opposite. It's a lot harder too, I might add.
Yeah, I mean,
A lot more challenging.
If you bowl a 200 in candlepins, I mean, you're doing a lot. And I think, like the one guy I watched, I think his name is Tom Olsta. I guess he's known as like the goat of candlepin bowling. And I think his average is about a 129, which, you know, that would be not even an average bowler, you know, for a regular 10 pin. But yeah. Very, very, very difficult.
Well, you guys think you got a boring life all weekend. I had to watch reruns of the Lingerie Football League. Terrible. Terrible.
Oh,
I didn't know that was available. I guess I'm gonna have to check that out.
I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I have been bowling since I was about a year old.
no kidding.
Candlepin.
Yeah.
Have an entire trophy room.
That's right. I forgot about that, Brittany. You're a really good bowler.
My uncle and my grandmother owned the bowling alley, and I got dropped off there every day on the school bus. And Nana stood at the top of the stairs and handed me a roll of quarters. So I'm a pinball wizard, also.
Well, okay. I remember Don Gillis. Remember Candlepins for Cash back in the 70s?
Yeah, he was.
I totally do. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a show.
Absolutely.
Used to watch him every Saturday.
My uncle, his name is Don Dwyer. He was the United States Candlepin Bowling Champion about 8 years before I was born, and he made Sports Illustrated.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Brittany,
That's a big title.
What's your high game?
I think it was 141.
Are you
No,
talking
150, 155, excuse
now
me.
regular bowling or candlepins?
Candlepin.
Okay. So you're talking about you weren't talking about 10 pin. You were talking about candlepins.
Candlepin.
That's a damn good score.
Oh, it was a one-time thing, believe me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fun to watch. I watch it quite often. But so tonight we're gonna go back to where we left last week, Texas and World Class Championship Wrestling. And you know, I've probably mentioned this more than once, but because older people tend to repeat themselves, sometimes out of both ends. But in my humble opinion, the two biggest what ifs in the history of professional wrestling was one, Magnum TA, Terry Allen, but the other one was the handsome half-breed, Gino Hernandez. So Gino was only 28 when he was found at his Highland Park, Texas condo by WCCW officials David Manning and Rick Hazard on, I think that's his name, Rick Hazard, on February 4th, 1986. It was speculated that Gino had been dead for several days. Now, initially, the death was ruled as a homicide, but once they did the autopsy, they reclassified it to an accidental cocaine overdose. But it's one of those things, speculation still abounds as to the true cause of Gino's death, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And, I mean, that's a guy I remember very well. I loved watching WCCW when it first came available to me in New York, and I remember seeing Gino and thinking, man, this guy has a rocket ship taped to him that's going straight to the moon. And when I heard about his passing, I remember thinking, you know, now that's two tragic deaths of very young stars from this great promotion. David Von Erich, I think, was 25 when he passed away in 84. And sadly, Gino's death was not the end of the tragedies, more like the beginning. So how did you guys feel when you heard of Gino's passing?
I just thought it was the saddest thing ever and very controversial, obviously.
That's the dynamic duo there of Chris Adams, who we talked about last week, and Gino.
What a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something about Gino Hernandez. I'm going to tell you the truth, just like Fred Blassie would. Whether the people out in podcast land like my opinions or not, I was not a big fan of Chris Adams, but boy, I was a fan of Gino Hernandez. I enjoyed watching him. I joined Walter's school back in the early '80s, so I was watching him closely. He was a good wrestler. He played the part good. He had a lot of talent. I remember getting a wrestling magazine in Brockton one time, and he was in it from Madison Square Garden against Johnny Rodz. That's obviously back in the '70s. We didn't get that on TV. So when I saw that in the wrestling magazine, I thought that was like really something. And so I already knew who he was when I started watching him in World Class. But he had a lot of talent.
He was a natural, just he had it. He had the look. He had the physique. He had he could work in the ring. He just had it all. I mean, that was one of those guys that, man, he's gonna go places. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. How about you, Phil? What did you recall when you heard he passed away?
It was either Bill Mercer, longtime voice of World Class Wrestling, or Mark Lawrence, who sometimes kind of did a journalistic role there too. Who they announced it, and of course it was kind of in real time now, because up here in New England we got the broadcast every week, and way ahead of the magazine, so we heard it on air before it made the magazines. But as you mentioned, Benny, David Von Erich's passing just 2 years before, and up here kind of close to home too, we had Quick Draw Rick McGraw, and we had Jay Youngblood die. So as a young teenager, I started trying to put this all together, figuring, why are these young athletes dying so young? And even as a relative kid, I started drawing some conclusions and thinking that it was, potentially drug related. So it was a downer, man. It really was. It was just the start of something, a cascade of deaths that were soon to follow with the Von Erichs and even with with others in the business. So real bummer.
Yeah, I mean, so many. We talked about that last week. So many guys from World Class. Maybe they didn't necessarily die when they were in World Class, but even like Brody, Terry Gordy, Rick Rude, all died at a very young age, and they were all mainstays in World Class. It had some bad juju, I guess.
Yeah. Just the lifestyle, man. A product of those crazy Dallas nights, I think.
And I like to throw this out there. I like to throw this, if I can, as educational to everybody out there. I'm not just a pretty face or a sex symbol. I got a mind. Bill Mercer was actually, if you watch when John F. Kennedy got shot and killed, and they were parading, Lee Harvey Oswald up and down the corridors there. Bill Mercer was the reporter for that, if you watch that.
Really?
Bill Mercer.
Wow.
If you go back and watch when they were parading Lee Harvey Oswald up and down the corridors, and then when they finally brought him into the room to be interrogated with the reporters, Bill Mercer was the reporter out in the hallway. Young Bill Mercer.
I was going to say, you had to be very young back then.
Yeah, he was young,
Wow.
but you go back and watch that. That's him, and he actually asked Lee Harvey Oswald a question, when they brought him in front of the reporters. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Very.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, that's some really cool wrestling trivia, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So I'm assuming Fritz Von Erich must have knew of him. He must have been a big reporter out there, because he was right in the corridor. He was the main guy right there. He actually asked Lee Harvey Oswald questions. Have you been arrested yet? He asked him. But I'm assuming that's how Fritz Von Erich got him to a World Class. He was a big reporter out there.
Wow.
And believe it or not,
I'm not just a pretty face.
a fountain of information.
You are that too, Dave. Don't discount yourself. You're a 5-tool player, as they say in baseball.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I'm gonna once again hand the wheel to the bad girl, and I'm gonna try to keep quiet, because I've learned over the years that when you don't do the backseat driver thing when there's a lady in control. So, Brittany, take it away.
Glad you learned. I wish
Oh, yeah.
everybody would.
Learn my lessons well.
Well, folks, Gino Hernandez was actually born Charles Wolfe Jr. on August 8th, 1957, in Highland Park, Texas. He was the stepson of wrestler Luis Hernandez, who trained with him starting from the age of 12. Oh, that's a nice picture. Gino's first recorded match was in Houston on August 1st, 1975, a week before his 18th birthday. Wow.
Yeah, he started young. Wow.
That's amazing. Hernandez defeated Bulldog Don Kent in January 1977 for the prestigious NWA U.S. Heavyweight Championship, and Ed Farhart's the original Sheik. His big time wrestling promotion. He was just 19 years old. He dropped the belt to the Sheik in April, and this was the first of 28 championships that he would earn in his very brief career.
Amazing.
He made his one and only appearance at the Madison Square Garden on March 7th, 1977, which is what Dave was talking about, defeating Johnny Rodz, and we'll chat more about this later. For several years, Gino wrestled for both Joe Blanchard's Southwest Championship Wrestling as well as Fritz von Erich's WCCW, becoming a permanent fixture for Fritz in 1984. He was paired with our subject from last week, gentleman Chris Adams. The pair was known as the Dynamic Duos, and they drew huge money feuding with the Von Erichs. Hernandez also experienced phenomenal success as a singles wrestler, winning the NWA American title as well as the NWA Texas Heavyweight title on multiple occasions. Shortly before his death, he was involved in an angle where he turned on Adams, blinding him in the process. The feud was anticipated to draw huge money and last for most of 1986. Gina was known to run around with a very rough crowd. I think we all heard about this, including several known figures in the drug world. World-class official Rick Hazard was sent into Gino's condo after he no-showed a couple of dates in early February. His body was found on February 4th, already showing some decomposition, indicating that he had been dead for several days. The initial cause of death was listed as homicide, which was changed to cocaine intoxication after the autopsy. Hernandez reportedly had either 4 or 5 times the fatal amount in his system. Imagine that.
Yikes.
A noted drug dealer named John Royal reportedly approached Gino's mom, Patricia, and offered to pay for his funeral. Several sources, which included WCCW referee David Manning and valet Jeannie Clark, aka Lady Blossom, aka Mrs. Billy Jack Haynes, aka Mrs. Chris Adams, aka Mrs. Stone Cold Steve Austin,
He's been around.
reported that Gino was acting very paranoid and anxious in his last days. This also was verified by his mother. He was actually married twice, both to the same woman. They were married and divorced twice between April 1976 and July 1979. They had 2 daughters, and this all happened, all of this, before his 22nd birthday.
I tell you what, man, you talk about living a lot in a very short life. So the guy won 28 championships, and he was only 28 when he passed away. Already has 2 kids, been married and divorced twice before he hits 22. I mean, that's a fast liver. So what do you guys think? I mean, when I heard about it, I thought, well, something shady happened there. And like after I watched The Dark Side, I really thought that something, to me, something doesn't sit right. How about you guys?
Well, he lived on. Go ahead, Dave.
I just want to thank my mother up in heaven for punching me in the head growing up when I did something wrong, because, man, these kids, all the drugs they did, and I just lost their way. They had so much talent and lost their way. I'm glad that a lot of my friends didn't go. I have a lot of friends, as we all do, that in the business, and they didn't go down that road. But I tell you that the drugs just ate a lot of good talent up. A lot of good talent.
Mhm.
And it's sad because
Agreed.
this guy had it. He would have. I mean, he would have went. He could have potentially been WWF champion. He was really good. I look at people like, hey, the way I look at people and talent, wrestlers and talent is, hey, do I want to watch this, or do I want to go out and go to the bathroom, go grab a beer or a Diet Coke, or do I want to
Right.
stay in front of the TV and watch this guy? And I would stay in front of the TV and watch this guy. I wouldn't miss this guy's matches.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he had quite the charisma. And, he lived the lifestyle. He, like the song says, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. That's actually the Fall Guys song. But Gino has been seen with Farrah back in the day, amongst others, He hobnobbed with the stars. He dated some pretty famous people.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of good pictures in some of the old magazines of him with certain figures, like Lou Rawls, the singer. I know, again,
Wow.
Farrah was, he knew her, I think, pretty well, too. Gino was a very popular guy. He transcended, I think, the wrestling business. And, if wrestling didn't end up being his thing, who's to say that Hollywood wouldn't have been something for him, too, He had the looks, the
Yeah.
charisma, and everything else. And, I think that would have been an avenue for him, too. But, yeah, it's that Dallas lifestyle of the late 70s and early to mid 80s, that I think was, he didn't want to leave it. He had offers from other territories and, other opportunities, but he loved the area. He loved the Texas area, Before I saw him anywhere, I saw him in Southwest Championship Wrestling in San Antonio, before we ever saw him in World Class or anywhere else. But yeah, I always think, what if we saw him in Crockett in Mid-Atlantic, in NWA in Georgia, and then eventually up here, just,
You would have been in a lot of WrestleManias, I can tell you that.
Oh,
yeah.
Honestly, I saw him more of a because I have a note here. I said, he was Ric Flair on cocaine, literally. I mean, he lived the same way Flair did. I think actually a lot harder than Flair did. But I could have seen him coming to the NWA, and him and Flair going back and forth. I mean, I also I could see him also being a champion level guy in the WWF back then, but I saw him more of definitely a foil. I don't know if he would have been the baby face or Flair would have been the baby face, but that would have been a hell of a rivalry.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know what?
yeah.
If listen, everybody's got their vices. I mean, I used to like to drink in the old days. I didn't do drugs, but I mean, once you start having kids, if that don't put you on the straight and narrow and get off the drugs, I don't know what would,
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Absolutely. That's the
all
time
these
to do it.
superstars that had kids. I mean, they had fame and fortune, but they had kids and they're all on the drugs. And Walter used to talk about that a lot at the school too. And that's what Bruno was worried about when he came back in the 80s. Bruno was worried about going in the ring he would only go in the ring with certain guys because he knew a lot of these guys were up on steroids or up on the drugs. And he said that in an interview before. And he was worried.
He requested that he travel with Strongbow because he didn't want to be in the car with any of the guys.
Right.
Because God forbid one of them got caught with any kind of drug. Bruno didn't want any part of that. But Phil, I have a question for you. I had one of my notes here because I think you might know the answer to this, but or have a good opinion on it. But on the Dark Side of the Ring, the one thing that I had heard was that he was possibly Paul Bosch's biological son. Get into, but could that be remotely true or?
I mean, anything is possible, but the truth is, they were very, very close. They had a very close relationship, and yes, Paul Bosch and Gino's mother were friends, and they might have even been coworkers at some point or colleagues to some extent.
Correct.
But yeah. But I think beyond that, no, I don't think. Oh, there's Gino and Farah. But I don't think that's the case. But Paul Bosch was obviously very devastated when Gino passed, and I mean, Gino had been around the office since he was a kid anyway, so they had that kind of tight relationship. And but I don't think that's the case. I think people are just looking for just to get that rumor mill rolling a little more. No. I mean, he grew up with his dad was, after all, a wrestler himself. And no, he was just very close. And I'm sure wrestlers talk, and, because he might have been Paul's one of his favorites, there might have been those thoughts. But I know it was speculated back then, too. But ultimately, I think it's been disproven. So, I don't see the resemblance anyway,
Yeah, something I had always heard. So
Yeah.
I do know that Paul really looked out for him, and I mean, I'm sure he had many a good payoff. Yeah, wrestling in Houston.
He was,
Yeah.
See, I heard the opposite. I heard Joe Blanchard was his father. I could be off on that one, but I heard a lot of rumors Joe Blanchard was his father.
Wow.
Wow. Imagine Gino and Tully as brothers, huh? The
That's what
dynamic duo.
That's
Yeah.
what I always heard. When I heard Paul Bosch, I said, "Well, I don't know." I heard Joe Blanchard, but you're Phil's right. You get a lot of rumors.
Absolutely. I love those old cowhide belts, though, that Southwest had. We haven't seen anything like that since. I really, of course, now with PETA and everything else, I think we wouldn't see those.
Very underrated, in my opinion. Southwest was a very underrated promotion territory.
Absolutely. It was blood and guts, man. It was kind of extreme before ECW. Yeah.
It was like crime scene type stuff.
Yeah. I loved it.
World Class was tame, I think, compared to Southwest.
Absolutely. Southwest was a bloody mess every week. Bobby Jaggers. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good name, yeah.
The Hangman, Bobby Jaggers.
The state of Texas, you had the Houston territory. You had, World Class. You had Southwest. You had Amarillo. I mean, all these great territories in one state.
And when you think about it, why would you ever really have to leave, like in Gino's case? Because he could go from promotion to promotion, get different kinds of TV exposure, do 6 months a year in one territory, cycle through and, hit a new territory and still be relatively close to home, and it was, I imagine it was a great place to be in that time period.
Yeah. I mean, how'd you like to be 19 years old? 19 years old, and a lot of people out there that out in podcast land that never wrestled, they probably don't understand this, but how do you like to be 19 years old and be in the ring with the Sheik, Ed Fairhart, the original Sheik? That must have been, I mean, you talk about getting experience and being in the ring with a legend at 19.
Well, yeah. Well, the Sheik must have respected Gino's dad and Gino's training to ever allow that to happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, at 19, we're just trying to get our first match or trying to get our first 10 matches under our belts. Never mind being in the ring with the Sheik.
But I mean, that belt was not given to just anybody. I mean, you think about the people that held that U.S. title in the Detroit territory. I mean, I know that. What's his name? Bobo Brazil had it a million times, and so did Sheik. But I mean, anybody if you look at the lineage of who won that belt, it is a who's who of great wrestlers. So I mean, for Ed Farhat to have given Gino that belt at 19 years old, he definitely saw something in him.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
So this, speaking of that, and we Brittany mentioned the Johnny Rods match in Madison Square Garden. So both Davey O'Hannon and Johnny Rods both told me this, and Davey more than Johnny, but that Gino came in to the locker room at Madison Square Garden with that belt, and he was an arrogant prick, pardon my language. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm Hernandez. I'm the United States champion." And like 10 feet away is Bruno. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm San Martino. They tell me I'm some kind of champion too." And it was like, these guys were just so put off by his disrespect that, he got the win over Johnny Rodz, but Johnny Rodz said he beat the ever-loving shit out of the guy. And Johnny Rodz could do that.
He's a policeman. Oh, yeah.
Now you didn't mess with. And, he did not like how disrespectful Gino was. And he definitely gave him a wrestling lesson there. Yeah, he put him over like he was supposed to, but I'm sure he felt it the next couple of days.
I bet.
And interestingly, too, a couple years later, Kevin Von Erich made his MSG debut, I guess, against Johnny Rodz, and Johnny roughed him up a little bit too, but probably as a receipt to or for some of Kevin's potatoes, But Johnny did the same to Kevin too, apparently.
I wish when Flair came to Madison Square Garden, I think it was in '76, and they put him with Pete Sanchez. And good match, and Pete did a good job, but a Rodz Flair match would have been epic.
Oh, yeah,
that would have tore the house down.
Absolutely.
I bet.
And I'm thinking this guy looks like he's got some potential, but and Sanchez made him look good, but man, Rodz could make anybody look good.
I could never understand why they didn't do anything with Johnny Rodz. He had a good physique, great worker. I don't know how he was in front of a microphone because they never interviewed him, but I don't know why they didn't do anything.
And I never understood this, and they did do it later on, but the NWA had that World's Junior Heavyweight Championship, which some real notables like Dory Funk Sr. had it. The great Angelo Savoldi had it many, many times. And the rivalry with Angelo Savoldi and Danny Hodge, who's like one of the greatest shooters ever in Oklahoma.
He's the best.
That is the stuff legends are made of. There was a match where I don't know if Savoldi won. I think he beat Hodge to retain the junior, to retain the championship, and he felt this like warm sensation running down his back, and he got stabbed, which was bad enough, but it was Danny Hodge's father that stabbed him.
No,
that's great.
How seriously people took their wrestling back then.
That was great.
It wasn't smartened up, I guess.
Apparently not.
Wow.
You think about it. The who's who held that championship. I don't know why the WWF didn't do something similar, because to me, Johnny Rodz would have been the perfect World Junior Heavyweight Championship champion for the W. It would have been perfect.
But I think too, and I agree with that. He had everything going for him, but instead of being the star, he was the guy who kept the stars in check, I think. And I think that was his role. And if he were a star in his own right, it would be a little more challenging for him to really fit that role. So, I think that was his. Yeah, I think that was his destination.
Well, and he's another one. A number of guys like Baron Cicluna, DiNucci, Johnny Rodz, Sanchez. I think any of those guys could have made. They could have done a lot better had they traveled more and gone to the other territories. But they chose the homestead. Especially like Cicluna and DiNucci at the end of their careers, and it really makes me upset when and I shouldn't even react to it, but I'll see something on Facebook where somebody calls Baron Cicluna a jobber. It's like, do you understand that this guy main evented Madison Square Garden? I think it was '66 with Bruno.
Yeah,
he had Bruno in his submission hold, the hangman's hold, and Bruno, in attempting to kick out of it, kicked the referee, and the referee disqualified Cicluna. Go figure that one. But so this is a guy that's taken Bruno to his limit.
Yeah. And a tag team champ with King Curtis Iakea back in the day too.
What a tag team that was. Not a Mike guy. I don't think I ever heard a Baron Cicluna promo ever.
When you get stabbed, that's a great thing in wrestling. When you get stabbed and someone tries to stab you, and I was talking to Brittany about this, because she had her 4 tires slashed at one show.
Oh,
But
good Lord.
when you get your tires slashed and someone tried to tip my car over at the JFK,
You're
and
doing a great
Walter,
job, right, Dave?
that's it. Is that you're doing a phenomenal job. People, you're so good at what you do. People want to stab you. They try to turn my car, push my car over at the JFK at a show over there. And I try to tell Brittany, you know, I know it sucked. You got your tires slashed, but you're doing something right then, you know.
Was that Manchester, New Hampshire, Dave?
Which one?
The JFK? Where was that one?
That was over at the library, over there at the gym. They had Walter had a show over there.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
was thinking of the
Oh,
old
in
JFK.
Boston.
Ah, okay.
Boston, yeah.
Dave,
Yeah.
on the
That's
flip side,
wild.
if somebody sent you a Hallmark greeting card, you know, and you were a heel, I guess you'd have to look for other another place to work, right? But yeah, if you get stabbed, by golly, but you're absolutely right. Jimmy Valiant said it several times when he was on our podcast that when he was a heel, he did not have a car that was not vandalized in one way or another. I mean, I think Zbyszko got shot at. I think he had to like ride in the trunk of a car. I mean, you know, Bugsy McGraw was saying how, like, you know, in Florida there were several riots that he incited. You know, people.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard to believe now. I mean, the crowds that, you know, on Monday night and Friday night are relatively, you know, they're being entertained. But back then, like, you know, they were in a bloody fight.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. He kept having to replace his lights and his tires and everything else after, you know, kicking the drunks out of the bar and what have you.
A great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like nothing like the young kids out there today. They don't know, but I mean, to go to a wrestling match back in the '70s at Boston Garden, where they're throwing batteries and they're throwing darts at the wrestlers. I mean, it was great. It was phenomenal until he started putting up the plexiglass and all that.
The fishnet and all that.
Yeah, it was. But that was wrestling. That was fantastic. I mean, it was so rowdy there at the old garden. You know, it's a great place to see wrestling.
Yeah.
And people
Walter
still
got
say-
stabbed with a knitting needle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he got stabbed right in the leg with a knitting needle. I'm sure you heard that
Yeah.
multiple times, Dave.
Yeah. I forgot about that though. He told us about that.
Yeah.
But that's you know, you're doing your job. You know, you're doing your job.
I think Ken Patera was hit in the mouth with a chair up in Fitchburg at the Wallace Civic Center. It just, the fans are crazy, man. In Massachusetts, particularly, they always say Boston as as the main city, of course, but many wrestlers will say the toughest crowds they've ever encountered were right up here, you know. Believe it or not New York and not Philly especially, but yeah, Boston has often been blamed for that. So we've got some rabid, crazy fans up here for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll tell you, 99% of the problems I had with, broken windshield, all 4 tires, and my Volvo slashed.
Oh,
I was so mad that night. But 99% of all that happened in Massachusetts. The knife incident in the ring, with blood all over the place, happened in New Hampshire.
Wow. Okay. Massachusetts' little cousin to the north. Yes.
Yeah. That was I couldn't believe that. That was amazing. And somebody mailed me, I didn't even know there was a photographer there, but somebody ended up, and I still have these. They mailed me black and white 11 by 17 photos of the ring with the blood all in it and me standing there, and they had the guy, surrounded. But yeah, I can't even imagine if this stuff happens at Independence.
Wow.
I mean, what do you think Bruno and Walter and everybody else went through if this stuff happens at independent shows?
Yeah.
I had an old lady chase me in Weymouth. I was on a show with Walter, and I was in the semi-main event, and I forget who I was wrestling, but I was Walter's heel, and they had this little old lady, and I was antagonize her. Like I used to love to antagonize the crowd. Walter used to always teach her, look at the first two rows, pick somebody out, and just antagonize them. And I was antagonizing this old lady till she finally, when I got thrown out of the ring, she chased me around the ring. I went back in the ring, and Walter whispered. He was laughing his ass off, and he whispered to me, "Keep doing it. Go outside the ring again. Make her chase you. Make her chase you around the ring." He loved it.
And let's not forget that security was not like it is now back then, too. You were on your own, let me tell you. If you got into trouble, you were on your own in many ways.
There was not much in the way of security.
Yeah.
Very minimal. Yeah, you were on your own. And I mean, Jim Cornette told a number of stories about, guys that took a, swipe or, a chair or whatever. And then, the justice was, they got brought back in the locker room and they got the crap kicked out of them. And the cops looked the other way. And then they, that was it. They threw them out and I guess they went on their way.
It's crazy.
Why clog up the courts, right?
Right.
Right.
I think we all agree that wrestling was much more enjoyable when we wanted to see people stabbed and thrown batteries and darts at, right? Like,
I'll tell you, if you ever have a chance to take Pete Doherty out for dinner and pay for it, because I'll tell you, he can tell you a lot of stories about the old garden.
is he still around?
We lost him. I think we lost him like just a few months ago, actually.
What a name. Yeah, what a legend.
Pete Doherty?
I think we did. Guys can look it up and verify, but I'm pretty sure I remember reading that and being sad because I liked him when I was a kid,
Entertaining.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
We lost the Duke of Dorchester?
No, I'm sorry. Sanchez. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I goofed. The Duke is alive. Sanchez is passed. My apologies.
But
sorry, Duke up there. I've met you before.
Wanted to run something past you guys that was on the dark side too. Getting back to Gino is, I think her name is pronounced Aguirre or Gary, Patricia, Gino's mom. For years, she was absolutely positive that he was killed by drug dealers. And the guy, John Royal, that offered to pay for the funeral, according to her, said that he owed, meaning Gino, owed John Royal a lot of money. So, and there was another, I guess an anonymous guy that was in the drug world. And he kind of said the same thing, that I guess to supplement his wrestling income, Gino was dabbling around in some drug dealing. So at least in my mind, he was more than just a user. I think he was involved in some dealing. What do you guys think?
Ooh, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well,
yeah.
Look at Dino Bravo, so.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, if you owe somebody, like the mafia would tell you, if you owe them money, killing you isn't going to help them get your money back. So
yeah, then you have to write it off as a bad debt, because I was an accountant. I know these things.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think he just, he got some, whether he was booting the cocaine or whatever he was doing. He just got a bad batch, and that happens. I think he just got a bad batch. I don't think they wanted to kill him. I think they probably wanted their money, but if you kill him, you ain't going to get your money. But
I think he at least perceived that they were going to kill him because, Jeannie Williams, Lady Blossom, a.k.a. Mrs. Everything there, she said the same thing, that he acted very paranoid. The mother said, towards the end, he was very paranoid, always bolted his door. So I think at least he thought something was going to happen. Now, Dave, it does make a lot of sense. Why, if somebody owes you money and they're a professional wrestler, if you break their leg, well, they can't work. How are they going to pay you, right?
Exactly.
I think they would have just shot him anyways. That's what I mean. If they wanted to kill him, they would have shot him. I don't think he would have been died. I think he just died because he just got a bad batch, and he was just. Sometimes your heart can't take it. Just can't take it, and I think that's what happened to him, because I think if they wanted to kill him, they would have just shot him. That's the easy way out.
But not for anything. And, of course, like I can't put myself in somebody else's head, but, I'm Gino Hernandez. It's 1985. All right. You got your first WrestleMania. And now he's seeing, what's happening in New York, with Hulk and everybody else, and how it's, how Vince McMahon is starting to take over the wrestling world. You would think the light bulb would go off in his head, and and for him to think, well, you know what, that could be me pretty quick if I just keep my nose clean, and literally, and I'll get this guy's attention, or unless he was just too far gone by that point.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm wondering if he did so much drugs that he didn't even realize that he was destroying himself literally. Like, is it possible to do that much drugs? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he had 2 daughters. I mean, if that don't make you stop, nothing's going to make you stop. He must have just, you get up in the morning until you do it, and God knows what else he was doing besides, the coke and, I mean, you got to do some pills to bring you down too. God knows what he was on, but like I said before, I'm just glad my mother punched me in the head when I did wrong growing up, because I didn't get into, and there were people that had the drugs around me, but I didn't get into the drugs. I had a few beers, but I never did the drugs.
I was a really good kid, and I mean, I was a really good kid. I rarely, if ever, got in trouble, but I asked my parents in 1969 if I could go to Woodstock. Huh. And I got a very emphatic no. Hell no, no way. Like to the point where like it wasn't even worth arguing, because like I knew that there was no way that I was going to be able to change their mind. And I thanked them years later. It's like I can only imagine how I would have came back had I gone.
If he would have come back,
right? Exactly. If I would have came back, and what kind of shape I would have been. Like, I don't think I'd be here right now.
And we wouldn't either then, Benny, so we're glad you didn't go.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was mad too. It's like, come on. I said, Janis Joplin's going to be there. Hendrix, Santana, Creedence Clearwater. I mean, the lineup was absolutely incredible. And, I saw the payoffs it was a while ago, but I mean, they weren't very good, with the exception of, I think Hendrix got about 10 grand, but I think Santana got like $700, which even even then wasn't really that much money.
Right.
Wow.
I think they were screwed.
I'm just glad you didn't go and got a couple groupies got a hold of you and gave you some psychedelic gelatin, and we didn't see you no more. They tied you up in, like misery, like they did James Bond and tied you.
Right? Like, man, 14 years old.
I mean, I can just imagine. I can imagine the hair you had back then, Benny. Look at the hair you got now. I mean, they would have tied you up and wouldn't let you go.
It looked pretty identical. It's pretty similar lengthwise. It just was a different color back then.
Yeah, they would have put you down in the cellar and tied you up. That would have been it.
Oh, jeez.
You guys were all good boys, and here I was having my first keg party at 13.
And writing letters to Charles Manson and collect phone calls.
To
California, right? I love that story. That's a great story.
That is a bad girl.
Yeah. So.
And writing pig on the front door.
Oh no, that was a white Pyrex plate, and I had leftover ketchup, and my mother was terrified of anything like that. And I wrote pig in ketchup, and then I turned to her to give her the plate, and I made the big Manson eyes like that. And she screamed, and she threw the plate up in the air, and she called my father and said, "Come get her. She's going to kill me. She's going to hang me from the beams." So that was that story.
You remember on Channel 56, every single year, Brittany and Dave, they would air Helter Skelter right around the time of Charlie's. He would have a parole hearing, and they would air it so that way everyone would be reacquainted, like they could ever forget the crime, and ultimately he'd be denied parole. But every year on Channel 56, we'd watch it and scare the hell out of us. Steve Rail's back as the main character, as Charlie. Yeah. Scary.
I will say, in my mind, that he is the most evil person that has ever lived. That's just my opinion.
Well, you mean my grandmother, but
I'm sure there's worse, but
No, he's right up there for sure. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely the worst back then. I mean, I know there have been some pretty weird stuff going on now, like that guy with the tattoos around his mouth that looks
Wade
like it's
Wilson,
all
the Florida
sewn
guy.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard some pretty weird stuff about him. He seems like a friggin' weirdo, but um yeah, at least I didn't call him. At least I grew out of that.
What if he invited you to come for a visit? Like, would you have like run away from home?
Probably.
Wow.
And you were how old then?
I think well, it was before my no, it was right. Yeah, my parents were still together, so I think I was 11 or 12.
So you
Okay.
would
when I
date a
did that.
prison. You would date a prisoner, wouldn't you, Brittany?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
No. Now, when I was a teenager, I might have,
No
but not as
conjugal
an adult.
visits.
No,
Bad boys attract bad girls, you know.
that's true. I have picked some pretty bad ones, and that is why I choose to stay single because my picker ain't no good, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. John Callahan told me last Friday night that if I am to date anyone, it must go through him.
Oh
Oh,
boy.
really?
That's what he said.
Well.
It's good to have a protector.
John was a guest on our show, Dan and Benny. He was good. We liked him. Good guy.
Yeah, he's excellent. He's a great guy, but he's the fatherly type to all the younger kids. So I felt kind of good that he said that he was treating me like one of his kids, and we're like I think 3 years apart in age.
Wow.
So yeah, but he said that he said, Brittany, and I said, don't worry, John, I'm not going to date anymore. And he said, yeah, you never know though, but they're going to have to go through me because I'm going to have to, vet them.
That's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
What if
And he
you
doesn't
date a
even
what
know
if
the child.
what if you date a what if you date a midget? Would you have to bring the midget to John? John would have to.
Oh,
You'd have to approve the midget. Would you date a midget, Brittany?
no,
No. Okay.
no.
Just
Well,
remember,
I had a
when
friend.
when George W. Bush was looking for a vice president, he hired Dick Cheney to vet all the candidates. And you know what happened? He became the vice president. So
Yeah.
be careful, Brett.
No.
So you wouldn't go out with Sky Low, Brittany?
No, but he was awful cute. I have a picture with him from the LIWA that they did in Massachusetts. Oh, me and Brandy Alexander are on both sides, and he's in the middle. Oh, it's the cutest photo.
He
was
always
adorable,
looked to me
but
like
he
he
was
was
like
100 years old.
he was like my grandpa.
How old did he wrestle until?
Ooh, I want to say 60s.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I mean, when I
so
started
cute.
watching in '68, I mean, typically they would have him on like maybe twice a month on TV. I guess they had him every month at the Garden. But I mean, he'd be on and thinking like, man, even then I thought like, holy crap, this guy looks old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
seen
when
him.
I was a little kid, he looked old.
I seen him down at Jack Ritchie Sports Arena. I seen him with Little Brutus, teaming up with Little Brutus at the Jack Ritchie Sports Arena. And then I ended up wrestling on a show with him for Angels of Odie, which I don't want to tell the story. Brittany knows the story, but I don't want to tell it on air.
Jesus, man.
I don't want to tell it on air. But yeah, he was a character, that one.
Yeah.
I started to have my wonders about pro wrestling when I was a kid, and I saw the midgets, and I might have shared with you before. I caught them up in Fitchburg, first of all, at the Wallace Civic Center, and there was a spot where one of the little people bit the ref in the ass, kind of clamped on and kind of chased the ref around. And then a couple months later, we went to a card in Worcester, and I saw the very same thing happen again. And then I scratched my head and I said, there might be something going on here, And that's kind of
Yeah.
when that seed germinated a little bit too. But yeah, but very entertaining, the whole troop of them, Great
Yeah.
athletes too, especially. I mean, all things considered, really very impressive. And we think back to WrestleMania, getting a Bundy splash,
That was
that's
fantastic.
very
That was
impressive.
great. How come the midgets never OD'd? How come they never did drugs? They never did cocaine.
They couldn't reach the counter. No.
They didn't have money. They were a little short.
No.
Oh boy. Bada bing, bada boom.
Don't forget to tip your server. So, guys, for the past month, we've spoken about some really terrible, I think 4 in a row, wrestling tragedies, all involving wrestling, each one stranger than the next. So what do you guys think? Like, if you have to make a conclusion, was it accidental overdose or a murder? I almost wish we could afford to have Keith Morrison. And
Yeah.
there's only one conclusion.
That's kind of ironic, if I may. Keith Morrison, is he not the stepfather of Matthew Perry?
He is.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Speaking of overdoses and/or murders or that sort of thing. So that ironic choice, Benny, for that. And I didn't mean to interrupt you about Boston Bad Girl. I'm sorry, Britt. Go right ahead.
Oh, no. My opinion is just, and it may not be the popular opinion, but I can't believe that back then, if you owed drug dealers the amount that he allegedly owed them, that they weren't going to retaliate. Now, I agree with what everybody else said, especially you, Dave, about how, like, why bother killing him because you're not going to get the money. But that's what they do. And I don't believe he took 5 times the lethal limit of cocaine. I don't believe it. I believe that they gave him that. They forced it.
I'm with you, Brittany. I do. I agree with you.
I respectfully disagree with you. I think that he was just a party animal. I think
he was no doubt.
I think he just maybe was on a bender for a few days and just got a bad batch. Because I just believe if they wanted to kill him, the drug dealers, they would have just shot him coming like they did Dino Bravo. They wouldn't have bothered giving him drugs. They would have just shot him coming out of his house or set him up. But I think he was just got a bad batch, and with all the drugs that he did, sooner or later, your card's gonna, it's gonna be. And thank God he wasn't around today with all the fentanyl that's in the drugs today.
Oh, the fentanyl, yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
I really think that had that not all happened, we'd be, we're talking about the all-time greats. He would be in the conversation. I think he was really that good, and I mean, he was just at 28. Just starting to scratch the surface of his potential. He was going to do nothing but get better. Just.
I mean, him and Hogan, and you could see him and Hogan at WrestleMania in the main events, or main event at WrestleMania, or
him and Magnum, him and Flair, him and Tully. Like what great matches they would have.
How about him and Macho Man at WrestleMania?
Oh yeah.
That would have been a great one.
Amazing.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Once again, many thanks to our great friends in the live chat, as well as the millions
and millions
of true crime followers around the world. Please don't forget to catch Dan and Benny in the Ring tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We're going to take a look at the 25-year history of SmackDown. And then also on the Monty and the Pharaoh show, I think this week is the Glamour Girls, Leilani Kai and Judy Martin. Yeah, that's going to be a great interview. And then the following week, one of the greatest, to me, like the Mount Rushmore of mass wrestlers, if you have to include the Mass Superstar. You got, to me, the Destroyer and the Mass Superstar, they're 1 and 1A as far as the greatest of all time. I just, just unbelievable. So for the Boston Bad Girl, the President, and Dangerous Dave, this is the player telling everyone to stay safe and see you next crime. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.